Yeah. Steve Jobs. That's the title of my book, right? Pirates in the Navy. Steve Jobs thought it was better to be a pirate than to join the Navy because it's the distinction between a startup and a large company. Do you want to be in a speedboat or do you want to be in an oil tanker, right? And so startups have all these benefits around, freedom, working on your idea, lack of constraints. All of those things are really powerful draws to a startup. You can be really inventive there. Startups also have weaknesses, such as I think somebody said a startup is like a mosquito, like it's like a one-shot thing. If it misses, then So they have these risks around them. That's why venture capitalists don't invest in one startup and then wait. Right? We invest in multiple startups because we know that 90%, 70% of these are going to die. And so good for the venture capitalist, not so good for the founder.
Tendayi, welcome. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you very much for having me.
So your background has not only you work with not only corporates but also startups. So you worked in an acceleration programs and helped the startups. So what is the mindset of a VC and corporate when investing startups and innovation inside of the companies?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I started my life working in startup accelerators. I got into working with large companies later, and I got into working with large companies after the questions started coming up a lot more. And I'm sure you face the same, which is how do we bring the startup mindsets to a corporate environment? And what you really notice is that there's a real difference. Like in a startup accelerator, the accelerator is not expecting that all the 12 ideas that are in the cohort are all going to make money or all become big. Instead, the approach is to make multiple bets of a certain size based on an innovation thesis of some kind. And then over time, really pay attention to the teams to see which ones are the ones that deserve follow on investment. In large companies, leaders think that they can pick the winning idea on the first day. So they pick the one idea or even two ideas and they make one large bet, 2 million, 3 million, go work. And then they expect those couple of bets to become successful. And so you can see that, that approach makes sense if you're in your core business and you're trying to optimize your factory. But if you're really working on brand new ideas, it's impossible for you to know which one is the winner, right? And so that's the difference between these two worlds.
How can corporates find great ideas?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? Like in my experience, it all depends on what you mean great ideas, by the way. So in my experience, it's not that companies lack ideas. It is that they lack the space for those ideas to show up. And the reason why they lack the space for those ideas to show up is that when they're making their investment decisions, they're asking these startups or these innovation teams inside the company to complete a 35-page business case showing ROI over 5 years and revenue growth before they invest. So what they're doing is they're stifling the idea before it even gets a chance to breathe, be tested, be validated. So that people just don't submit their ideas because it's just too hard. So the best way to find great ideas, like Adam Grant says, is to have loads of ideas. And so what companies need to do is to open up the space for ideation within their organization. And what they'll find is that a lot of the people in the company have ideas. So when we say open up the space for ideation, by the way, we're not saying, have an idea jam and ideation session, idea submission competitions and things like that. We're really talking about opening up the space for ideas to not only be submitted, but also to go through the process of testing and iteration, and seeing whether there's a viable option there, and then double down only on those ideas that are showing traction, right? And so I think that's the actually historically that's the only way to find good ideas. I don't think you can just like find a good idea and just using your brain.
Most of the times, startups definition is these startups are looking for new business model, searching in the business model, not the copy of big corporations or big companies. So, but reverse, mindset, the companies wanted to also copy the startup mindset. Does it work?
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? When I first started working in startup accelerators, and the reason why we have Steve Blank and Eric Ries as these great human beings that made a significant contribution to business practice is because startups did not have a methodology that was for startups. They tended to copy large organizations. So they would have business cases, they would invest a lot of money, they would give each other C-level titles, and there's only 4 people there. They would do all of these things that like fake until you make it large company kind of behavior. And Steve Blank was like, a large company and a startup are different. The startup is an institution set up to search for a sustainably profitable business model. And until you find that, you don't want to act like a large company because you'll be executing on a wrong idea. You have to first find the right idea and then build the company around that. That's why building a company is a later stage in Steve Blank's process. So if you then flip that mindset, the real distinction here is uncertainty. That's the thread, right? Which is the more you know, the more you can execute. The less you know, the more you have to search. So if the uncertainty increases in your context, you have to step back and go, what are the risky assumptions? How do we validate those? So that's the thread. So if you take that idea and transport it to large organizations, that causes you to think, when does a large organization face uncertainty? A large organization faces uncertainty in 2 situations. The first situation is when the existing business is being disrupted by either new technology or new startups or new competitors coming in the market that are challenging the way that we've always executed on our idea. So you face some level of uncertainty then, and you have to figure that out. You can't just write it down on a piece of paper and execute. In that situation, in any case, a lot of the things about your business will be known. Only the areas in which you're getting disrupted do you need to do something. So that's one situation in which a large company faces uncertainty. Another situation in which a large company faces uncertainty is when they're working on something new. When an individual in the company says, I noticed that when we produce this chemical, it has this other effect that can take us into this other industry. Now, even though you're a large company, you are now in a startup situation. And the job for leaders is to recognize that moment to go, oh, this is an execution, this is a disruption, and this is a startup. And then once you know that, you then know the right way to manage each one of those things. And so the job there is not for companies to act like startups. That's not what we want, right? For the whole company to have a startup mindset. We want the large company to act like a portfolio of different products and services that are different phases in their journey, and just use the right tools, techniques to manage each element of their portfolio the right way.
When should companies create the innovation lab? What is the right approach, and what is the innovation framework that should they apply to their companies? I mean, cultures.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? When they create the innovation lab. So it's innovation. There's all kinds of innovation labs. There's innovation labs that are places for people to hang out and kind of share ideas and do ideation jams, host events, bring in speakers, all that to try and inspire the company into an innovation mindset. And then there are innovation labs that are really serious about working on business ideas and launching those ideas. And along that span, what you find is that the best way to set up an innovation lab is to focus on driving new value propositions and business model. People often ask me, are innovation labs good or bad? And I'm like, well, I can't tell you that until I know how the innovation lab is operating, right? If the innovation lab is running a lot of ideation jams, ideation campaigns, hackathons, but nothing ever happens to those ideas, then that's a problem. We call that innovation theater, right? Which is excessive focus on ideas and not enough focus on bringing those ideas to fruition. So that innovation lab is not the right thing. The innovation lab that's focused on building really great value propositions and business models, now that's a great innovation lab. So once you make that distinction to say, okay, we want this kind of innovation lab, the question then becomes, what does it take? And I can give you one example, which is, if you're an innovation lab that's focused on creating value propositions and business models, you cannot be too disconnected from the main business, right? You do need a bridge between the innovation lab and the main business. Because when you get to the moment when you want to scale these ideas or take these ideas to market in a big way, it's really fun for you to leverage the capabilities of your company, access to customers, access to brand, access to marketing, access to IP, access to legal services, that's the power of being in a large company. And if you can't access that power, then you might as well go do a real startup. Why would you do this in a large company? Because at least with the real startup, you have freedom. Whereas here, you don't have freedom. Plus, you don't have access to the organization's superpower. So it's really important for innovation labs to build a relationship with the big companies so they can really leverage some of those advantages.
Why do innovation labs fail?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately because they don't create any value. Right? So most innovation labs are opened with fanfare. Yeah, look at our innovation lab, our new chief innovation officer, Tendayi Viki, awesome. Yeah. And then after 3 or 4 years, a new CEO is appointed. And they come and they say, oh, we have this line item that says we give $5 million a year to this lab. Can you just tell me, like, what have they produced in the last 5 years that justifies this investment? And then you go look at the work. They bring in the chief innovation officer and the chief innovation officer, like, we're not supposed to be creating any products. We're here for the culture and all these and all those sort of excuses. And then the leader is like, no, we have to close this. It's too much money to spend on something that doesn't create.
How does AI will affect innovation creation and also idea creation in the companies?
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Because I work more in the space of how teams and organizations validate their ideas. And I think AI is going to really, I mean, it's already impacting. There's a lot of usage that we're already seeing in the innovation team, impacting how you target customers, what kind of questions you ask, how you do research around competitors. So it's allowing you to produce better quality knowledge by using AI upfront, especially generative AI upfront before you go out into the world to then start talking to people. So that's one aspect. And then, oh man, just think about the effect AI is going to have on the creation of new molecules, new technologies, just the shortcuts you can take, because you just plug this in and it starts to generate for you amazing solutions. And so I think that it's going to really advance how we create new technologies, new medicines, new molecules for foods, ingredients. Like, it's really going to advance the production of those things. And then if we take that technology and we think about how to create value proposition for customers, we can then use AI, generative AI, to research whether or not the value proposition resonates. The challenge will always remain, right? Which is having a great technology is not the same thing as having a value proposition. You only have a value proposition when your technology mirrors customer need, regardless of whether it's AI, blockchain, whatever it is. You still need to be able to transform those technologies into value propositions that actually resonate with customers. So that's the first thing. Another thing is, beyond value propositions, you still need a business model that generates profits and is scale. And so what these technologies do is they enable you to do that faster, better. But the fundamental question around innovation will still remain. It's just, how do we leverage these technologies to do better work?
So what is innovation accounting and what is the role of innovation accounting in your framework?
Yeah, so, and of course, the expert and master of this is Dan Toma. Shout out Dan Toma, my co-author in the corporate side. They have a great book with Esther Gonza, Innovation Accounting. And to strategize ourselves, we work on a framework around innovation metrics. And so here's an interesting challenge, right? This is a fascinating challenge, right? Which is, when you're working on a core business, right, you can track revenue and profits as they come in. You can actually see how many sales did we make this year? What are the costs of running this? And so you can really do basic accounting or fundamental accounting, universal accounting on that, because the numbers are live and you can see it's kind of happening. With innovation, you don't see any of that until later, right? And so what is the question? Like, what are you tracking if you're doing innovation? Like, what is the metric? And there's an overarching question. There's a big question on top of all innovation. And that big question is, how close are we to finding a business model? So that's the question that follows everyone. Like, when you invest in your startups, right, via Startup Istanbul and the various institutions that you're working in, you are, in the end, paying attention to, when am I going to get a return from this startup, right? And so that paying attention of when am I going to get a return from the startup is really asking the question, how close is the startup to finding a business model that's scalable, profitable? So the question then, from an innovation accounting perspective, is, because we don't have revenue at the moment, how do we know the team is on track towards finding a business model that works? Because it may take 2 years. So how do we know they're on track? Well, then we can start to set milestones. We know they're on track if they've got a validated customer need and they have data to support that the customer has the need. We know they're on track if they've run experiments and willingness to pay and can show customers are willing to pay. So you can start to set these milestones. We know that they're on track if they can get a first customer to accept a trial or a pilot. We know they're on track if they are now signing up more people than people that are churning away from the platform. We know they're on track. So you can start to set these milestones. And that's what innovation accounting is. It is the tracking of these milestones to ensure that people are on track towards finding a business model that works. And the moment they find business models that work, you can flip it back and go back to traditional accounting. But until that moment, you're going to need other ways and other metrics to measure whether or not teams are being successful.
It is always mixed about the research and development and innovation. Are they same? And what is the difference between research and development investments and innovation investments?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. In a lot of companies, when you say like, "What's your innovation?" They're like, "Yeah, we do a lot of R&D," right? And I think R&D is a very, very important element in advancing society, advancing products and services, advancing human life in general. You can't even have a pharmaceutical company if you don't have R&D, right? It's hard to have big technology companies like Bosch, for example, if you don't have some kind of R&D and IP that you own as an organization. And so R&D is an important but not essential ingredient to successful innovation. And the reason why we say not essential is because innovation is not the same thing as invention. It is not the same thing as creativity. It's not the same thing as breakthrough technology. Those things can be ingredients in innovation, but we only say that a team, a startup, or a company has a successful innovation when that innovation, the technology has impact in the world. Impact in the world through customer adoption, impact in the world through optimizing business processes, impact in the world through revenue, profits, growth. And so a successful innovation is a combination of your cool technologies, your R&D, together with value propositions that resonate with customers, plus business models that are scalable and profitable. So that journey from tech to value proposition to finally business model and profitability, that's what we call the innovator's journey. That's the formula that an innovator has to solve. If you're a scientist in an R&D lab, maybe you only travel part of the journey up to the technology, and then other people, commercialization folks, can take that and try and see if they can find a business model around that. We often say it's better to have the cross-functional team, so you have the scientists and the commercial people working together, but it's still a formula that you need. And so that's the difference. That's the real difference between innovation.
Product lifecycle coaches. What does it mean? And can you explain their roles and impact?
Yes. So I think, and I'm sure you do this, right, with your startup accelerators, right? You bring the startups in, and then you surround them with coaching.
It's true.
Right. Yeah. They don't just like join and then they go, okay, go do your work. Like they have to meet with mentors, have conversations with coaches, folks to remind them to stick to process, folks to remind them to be disciplined around not scaling too quickly or not building tech before they validate with customers. And so that's what we call them product lifecycle coaches, because product lifecycle was the name of the innovation framework inside Pearson, where I was working. In Intuit, I think they were called innovation catalysts, and in various organizations, they have different names. But coaches are really, really even much more important inside large organizations than they are in startups, because a lot of the teams that work on innovation in large organizations are doing it as a part-time job. Like they have a full-time job, and then they go to the accelerator 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever. They're never there 100%. And so coaching, so they don't have time to master the methodology. And so coaching really helps with mastery. They show up, they help you design experiments, help you run experiments, help you analyze data, and help you, make progress. So we encourage a lot of the people that are working on innovations inside large organizations to be surrounded by coaching.
Faced with choice of starting a company or joining a large corporation, why did Steve Jobs believe it was more fun to be a pirate than joining the Navy?
Yeah. Steve Jobs, that's the title of my book, right? Pirates in the Navy. Steve Jobs thought it was better to be a pirate than to join the Navy because it's the distinction between a startup and a large company. Do you want to be in a speedboat or do you want to be in an oil tanker, right? And so startups have all these benefits around, freedom, working on your idea, lack of constraints, all of those things are really powerful draws to a startup. You can be really inventive there. Startups also have weaknesses, such as, I think somebody said a startup is like a mosquito, like it's like a one-shot thing. If it misses, then, so they have these risks around them. That's why venture capitalists don't invest in one startup and then wait. Right? We invest in multiple startups because we know that 90%, 70% of these are going to die. And so good for the venture capitalist, not so good for the founder. And so the founder is like really struggling with that because their startup might die. And so that's the challenge it's almost like a trade-off. In startups, you exchange freedom for risk. Like it's a high risk. You get freedom, but you also get high risk. Inside large organizations, you get less freedom, but you get a chance to leverage the advantages of being in a large company. Access to brand, access to customers, access to market, like I said before. But you have less freedom. And so if you want to innovate inside a large organization, you then have to become a pirate in the Navy rather than try and make the difference. And a pirate in the Navy has particular behaviors, relationship building, kind of different kind of skill sets that they have to bring to the table in order to take advantage of the fact that they are inside a large.
Why is there nothing harder in business than trying to innovate within a large organization? What do you think that?
Yeah, no, I actually don't think anything is harder. And the reason of the hardship, right? What I'm learning, Burak, is that the reason for the hardships is the human side of it, which is how much discipline can you have to try something when you are already successful? You're already making money. Your company makes millions of dollars every year. You're the CEO of the company. Your bonus is $5 million a year, or whatever, right? Like, what is the reason for working on a startup? The startup is motivated because they have no money, so they're hustling, right? They got that energy because it's a survival mode for them. But inside a large company, what is the reason for this? And so trying as an entrepreneur in a large organization to galvanize the organization that this is important and we need to do it, that's hard. It creates barriers because the day-to-day life of an established company is keeping the lights on. They spend a lot of their time doing that. And so for them to turn their minds off that and pay attention to a small emerging idea, that's a hard thing. The only time that large companies do that is when they're being disrupted and they're scared. If they don't have a burning platform, it's difficult. And so that's why it's I think one of the hardest things to do in life.
In my point of view, companies should be afraid of when they are top of their success, not probably struggling or finding new products. Or do you think that it is the right approach to be afraid of? Do you have any examples?
Yes. So, like, I mean, I just came back from Dallas working with a bank out there. I spent 3-4 days with the leadership, and they are really successful. There's no reason for them to be thinking about innovation. But we spent 3 days just thinking about, what does the business model for the future look like? What are new products and services? Are we seeing any disruptors coming to take our lunch? And so, you're right. At the peak of your success is when you should be most afraid. And the reason why you should be most afraid at the peak of your success is because that is the time when you're at the highest risk of complacency. And when you get complacent, that's when you face disruption. And so it's the fear, it should be the fear of becoming complacent. Not the fear that you're going to die, but the fear of becoming complacent. But human beings find that the hardest thing to do. Because human beings tend to attribute their success to how clever they are. And so once you start claiming that you're clever because you're successful, you're far less likely to be humble and try and worry about disruption. And by the way, large company complacency is the opportunity for the startup.
That's true. Why is political acumen crucial for corporate innovators? And what is the role of humility in the context of corporate innovation?
Yeah. So remember we were talking about pirates in the Navy before, right? Yeah,
that's true.
And we were talking about how large companies are really focused on running the core business, and that you can't really succeed inside the large company if you don't have relationships with other people. So you can imagine that in a large company, if you're working on an innovation, legal and compliance will have something to say about. If you want to talk to customers, the sales team will be like, which customer do you want to talk to? That's my customer. Why should I talk about your idea versus selling them something we already have? If you want finance, you have to talk to the finance department. Like, but what is the return? You're like, no, I don't have a return. I want to run an experiment. They're like, no, we're not giving you any money. And so all these relationships matter for innovators to build so that they can really work on their idea. You don't need political acumen if you're running your own startup and you got funding and nobody's bothering you. But if you're in a large organization, it's impossible to be successful without other people helping you towards that journey.
Why is it a myth that one can always pivot their way to success?
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's an Alex Osterwalderism. So one of Alex Osterwalder's pet peeves around lean startup is the idea that if you don't find something that works, just pivot. Right? Because it's also possible that there's just nothing there. Like there's no pivots that you can make. So you can't always pivot your way to success or iterate your way to success. Sometimes the idea just fails because there's no customers, there's no market, there's no scalable business model. And so there's been always this feeling around startups sometimes that if I fail here, I'll just pivot. And sometimes you literally run out of runway before you find an idea that works. There's no money anymore. Nobody's willing to fund your idea. So you've run out of runway before you found an idea that works. So what do? You can't always pivot your way to success.
Why do some leaders, especially managers, believe that they need to make big bets, especially on innovation, not small bets and portfolio approach?
Yeah, it's an old legacy mindset that's based on one myth, which is they think they can pick the winning idea. Yeah, because the only reason why you would make a big bet is if you think, I know this is going to work, so here's $5 million or whatever. But if you're worried that I don't know which of these things is going to be successful, you'd make a small bet, and then say, let's see what happens. And if it's successful up to a milestone, I'll make another bet. And then if it teaches another milestone, I'll make another bet, which is how you make investments, right? And so, and so large companies, they make this because it's part of their legacy processes in their financial systems, in the Oracle or whatever SAP thing they're running in their company. They don't even have a designed process for making incremental bets and managing a portfolio of those bets. They don't have it. They have a system for big bets, business case, ROI. That's what they have set up. So it's really hard for them to break that mold and try and build something.
You are visiting lots of innovation labs and companies and also connecting with lots of internal entrepreneurs. So when you ask them about their portfolios, innovation portfolios, how many of companies show you their portfolios?
Yeah, so far, far less than should be the case, and far, far more than it used to be. Right? So most companies don't have this, but there's quite a number of companies that now have innovation portfolios that they track. Because again, think about Steve Blank and Eric Ries and Brian Cooper and all these folks that kind of started this movement. And then the evolution of now, which is what, we're in 2024 now, so 14, 15 years later, since the Lean Startup movement kind of started taking hold. So if you think about this evolution, you can see that we're getting more and more and more and more tools to apply to our process. And so you see more adoption of these tools by large organizations. But yeah, it's not that many still.
If you could give one piece of advice, probably you are getting lots of questions from the managers and companies to an executive on enabling innovation, what would it be? Let's say not one piece of advice, but 3 of advice.
Yeah, so the first thing I think for every leader is to just understand this distinction between running your core business and driving innovation, and just make sure that you're enabling the right culture and processes for driving innovation. I do think that if you're a leader, visible leadership support is really powerful. A lot of CEOs will spend a lot of their time on innovation, and I think that when you have leadership support, it just legitimizes the innovation team and gives them more access to resources and time. And then you can't pick the winning idea. You just have to make multiple small bets and see which ones work out, and then double down your investment on those ideas. I think those are the big 3 pieces that I would give.
What do you see as the biggest shift in 5 to 10 years in this vertical? I mean, innovation and companies, because artificial intelligence and new technologies has been developing very quickly. Do you think that will affect also these strategies and also mindset and also framework?
Yeah, I mean, so the sense of comfort that organizations have that they won't be disrupted has been shifting a lot. Before AI, people were already talking about how the speed of change is so fast. And now AI is here and the speed of change has stepped up again. And so companies are really feeling the weight that the world shifts under your legs quickly. And so they're really feeling the need to set up innovation systems to keep up with this change shift. So I think you'll see a lot more innovation functions inside organizations that are well established, which leads me to the real development that I'm really looking forward to, because, and Eric Ries talks about this in his book, The Startup Way, and he calls it the missing function. He says in most organizations, there's a marketing department, there's a finance department, there's a sales department, but there's no entrepreneurial department. And so that missing function, I think you'll find that in a lot of organizations, it's no longer a missing function. It's a full-time function with full-time teams that are dedicated to driving it, creating. They don't need to work on ideas, but they do need to create the ecosystem, the processes, the practices, the toolbox, the governance, managing the fund, all of those things, right? You're going to see more and more organizations with an innovation function. And I think that's going to be really great for folks like me, because I like being, that's like for me, it's a historical moment if you want to think about that, because it's a moment in which you see something nascent sort of bubble up inside an organization. Beyond R&D, a full entrepreneurial innovation function in an organization.
What is your favorite business and non-business book besides yours?
So at the moment, my favorite business book is Originals by Adam Grant. I love that book a lot. It's a great book around thinking about ideas and how to make ideas successful. And then Deep Work by Cal Newport. That's my favorite non-business book. Yeah. So those are my two favorites at the moment. It changes all the time, but yeah.
Do you like science fiction? Do you read also non-business books?
No, actually, which is something my wife has been trying to get me. I got a whole library of books over here. You can see them in the background there. Those are all like either business, self-development, psychology books, right?
Where are you right now?
I'm in Harare, Zimbabwe. That's where I live these days.
So if we come to Zimbabwe, which parts and what should we see first in the 5 topics?
What should you see first 5 times? Okay. So the number one thing is Victoria Falls, right? It's one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. So we would encourage people to go there. That's a fun place. Of course, come to the Sunshine City where I am, the capital, Harare. You know, we'll welcome here. And then there's several other things. You can go on game drives in Wange. You can go to the mountains in Chimani. So we have a lot here in Zim for you to enjoy. So maybe
what is the best season to come, by the way?
The best season is just after the rainy season, before winter. So around April, May-ish time. Yeah. Because things are still green and it's not too hot anymore, you know. It's beautiful.
Do you have morning routines and rituals that help you? Yes. Challenging innovation work each day?
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a morning routine, which right now is completely broken because I'm traveling so much. I usually wake up, I pray, and then I do a little bit of exercise, and then I read, right? Do a little bit of reading, and then I write, because I just have to write, because it's the life of an author. So that's like maybe the first 2.5 hours of my day. And then after that, I open my email and then I drown.
What is the next book about?
I don't know yet. I've been thinking about it, tossing various ideas with Alex. I have a PhD in psychology. That's my background. And so I'm really starting to think about how do I combine these two worlds, like psychology and innovation, to build something that's kind of unique. So we'll see. We'll see. Still.
So if you go back to your new graduates of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
Stop worrying. You just never know where you're going to end up. Like, well, what you think you're going to be doing is not what you're going to be doing. That's what I would have told my youngest one. Yeah.
Tendayi, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Burak. It's such a pleasure to have had the conversation with you.